What's up, everybody? Welcome to this next World Cup preview. Today is all about Denmark. Before we jump in, though, wanted to quickly remind you, be sure to hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube so you don't miss any of the other World Cup previews, all of the other video content I'm posting every week. You can also find all of my written stuff, including the written World Cup previews, on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com, and they're also slowly moving over to Medium as well, so you can find them there too. Denmark, sixth World Cup appearance for the Danes. This is second in a row for Denmark, also qualified in 2018. Before that, missed 2014, so the last time was 2010. Best ever showing at a World Cup, 1998, made it to the quarterfinals. To get to Qatar, Denmark won 9 of their 10 qualifiers. It was a group featuring Austria, the Faroe Islands, Israel, Moldova, and Scotland. So you would expect Denmark to take care of business. They did just that, plus 27 goal differential. Very few issues during qualifying. On paper, they were the best team in this group. They performed like it. Plenty of other teams had a much more stressful path to Qatar than Denmark did. Key players. There is one place to begin, and it just works out alphabetically. He happens to be first on this list as well, and that is Christian Eriksen. You might know Christian Eriksen as the longtime Tottenham star who produced 0.56 goal involvements per 90 minutes in the Premier League with Spurs during his long stay in London. You might also know Christian Eriksen as the player who gained international attention when he had that horrifying collapse in Denmark's opener at Euro 2020, had to be resuscitated. It was just absolutely horrifying. The Denmark team was understandably just kind of in shock and despair and trying to find a way to continue to play without Christian Eriksen, not knowing. Eventually they got the confirmation that he was okay, thankfully, but then they had to carry on the rest of that tournament without him. He is the heart and soul of this team. He is their creative force, and all of a sudden he just wasn't there. It wasn't clear if he was ever going to be able to play again. If you remember anything about Euro 2020, for, again, horrible reasons, but Christian Eriksen's collapse was quite possibly the biggest story of that tournament in terms of sort of the conversation and what people were talking about. Thankfully, great response both by the Denmark team and the medical personnel. He was resuscitated, he recovered, and miraculously is back playing. Took some time, but did join Brentford, came back to the Premier League at the end of last season. A goal and 4 assists in 11 games with Brentford. They were terrific with him. He was terrific for them. That set the stage for him to join Manchester United as a free agent this summer, playing a little bit of a different position for Manchester United, but off to a very good start. And despite everything he's gone through, reminding everybody just how technically gifted and how special of a player Christian Eriksen is. The soccer world is a better place that he is back. Thankfully, he is okay and is also back playing for Denmark. And so that is going to be one of sort of the under discussed storylines, I feel like, heading into this tournament, is that Christian Eriksen, thankfully, luckily, is back playing at the club level and is back representing his country at another major tournament a year and a half after nearly losing his life. It's an incredible story. So happy that it had a happy ending. Second player, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Tottenham midfielder. He was on the Euro 2020 team in the tournament. He had 3 assists in that tournament during Denmark's run to the semifinals. He did not make Denmark's 2018 World Cup team, which, looking back on it now, I still have a little bit of a hard time to believe, but that is the reality. So Pierre-Emile Højbjerg gonna be making his first World Cup appearance here. He has been a mainstay in the midfield, both at the club level and in the past couple seasons at the international level. He's really cemented himself as a key contributor for this Denmark team. And now he's an indispensable part of a midfield for one of the better teams in the world at Tottenham. He doesn't score a lot of goals. One of the notable ones was the goal he did score that sort of set the series of events in motion that led to the confrontation between Antonio Conte and Thomas Tuchel at Battle for the Bridge Part 2. That was Pierre-Emile Højbjerg's goal. That all of a sudden he's celebrating and cameras are flashing to the two managers nearly fighting each other on the sideline. But what Højbjerg really brings, yes, he can contribute a goal here or there, but it's his passing, it's his tempo setting, just his overall versatility within the midfield, and all-around play. That's the better way to put it. He just gives you a little bit of everything. He's incredibly reliable, plays both ends of the field. The numbers aren't flashy, but he's just one of those players who makes your team and everybody around him better. And that has certainly been the case for the Denmark team when he has been in the midfield. Third player, sticking, well, not now in the Premier League, but you know him from the Premier League, that is goalkeeper Casper Schmeichel. Schmeichel made 479 appearances in his 11 seasons with Leicester City. Of course, you know him as the goalkeeper on the incredible 2015-16 team that won the Premier League. 86 caps. He has been the Denmark goalkeeper. He did choose to leave Leicester City this summer. He is now playing for Nice in France. He leaves Leicester as an absolute stone-cold club legend, one of the greatest players in that club's history. Of course, has been part of this incredible run they've been on the past 6-7 seasons here with the Premier League title, with the FA Cup, getting to the Champions League, all of that. Schmeichel, a key contributor. The other thing I want to point out here, of course, you've got the bloodlines from his dad. He's more than cemented himself as a world-class goalkeeper and is incredibly accomplished at the club level. There's not too much else to say about sort of his resume. But when I think of Schmeichel, I don't necessarily think of him as a penalty expert. I see him more as a elite shot stopper. He's really, really good. Sort of reflexes, reacting quickly to things. I don't see him as this penalty specialist. But it is worth pointing out, he's faced 5 penalties in the last 2 tournaments he's played for Denmark, the 2 major ones. 2018 World Cup, Euro 2020. 3 of those 5 penalties were saved or missed. Of course, he only had so much to do with the misses. But he has this incredible ability when he is playing for his country to really, as good as he's been at the club level, to kind of elevate it even more and come up with some penalty saves, come up with these huge stops. He is as solid as they come. Legend for Leicester at the club level, legend for this Denmark team, for the kind of this resurgence as they become a real force to be reckoned with on the international level. So that will also be a name to know there as he's kind of transitioning into the final stage of his career. This may be one of the last opportunities you get to see him at something close to his best. Certainly worth pointing out, he's going to be a key member for this Denmark team as well. In terms of a breakout star, I went with Andrea Olsen. 5 goals, 3 assists during qualifying. And not only is he becoming an indispensable member of this attack with the numbers he's putting up, but I very much see this as a situation where he could do something incredibly similar to what Michael Damsgaard did at Euro 2020. Nobody had really heard of him coming in. He had, sort of established himself at the club level, but not at a big name club that everybody is familiar with. And he shows up, he starts pouring in goals, and all of a sudden he becomes kind of this household name because of his performance in that tournament. I'm picking a potential breakout star for every single team. If I had to sort of power rank them as the most likely guys to really get that attention and truly become breakout stars at this World Cup, Andrea Olsen is right there at the top of that list for me. Everything is set up for him, and I'll get to a little bit of this in a second, but everything is set up for him to have a huge tournament and for him to be one of those names you walk away from this World Cup talking about and kind of wanting to keep an eye on as he continues to progress in his career and does things like play in the Champions League, which he's doing this season for Club Brugge. The bottom line with this team, the reason for optimism is a fairly basic one, but it's one that often gets overlooked. The spine of this team, if you just go straight up the middle, it's not on the same level as the very, 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 very best teams in the world, but good luck finding 5 to 10 better than what Denmark has. You start with Schmeichel. You got Andrea Christensen, Simone Kjaer, options at center back. Maybe not the biggest names in the world, but guys who have played in huge games, who have played at huge clubs. Then you get to the midfield. Already talked about Emil Højbjerg and Christian Eriksen. That right there is comparable to just about what any other team in the world can offer, save a handful. And if you want to be strong somewhere in your team, it's the midfield. It's goalkeeper. It's center back, right? Some of these spots where a lot of other teams have question marks. And if you're poking holes in a lot of teams, that's where you're going to start. That's just not the case with this Denmark team. If you exclude sort of the teams that are just loaded everywhere, very few of them you point to sort of the middle of the field and go, yeah, they're really set in those positions. Good luck trying to hang with them. Denmark is in a position to dictate terms of games because of what that midfield has and the solid center backs and goalkeeper behind them. You will notice I did not include striker in that conversation. My big question for this team is, can you find a consistent goal scorer? At the Euros, you got 5 from Casper Dolberg and Yusuf Poulsen combined. That was a big reason why this team was so successful at that tournament. Christian Eriksen will chip in with a few here or there. Emil Højbjerg, also capable of scoring like we talked about. And there are Damsgaard, Skav Olsen. There are plenty of quality attacking players for this Denmark team. The question just is, can you get enough goals? Can one of them sort of cement themselves as the informed player? And you might not know who that's going to be until you get to the tournament. And somebody has a fantastic first game, and all of a sudden they're starting the rest of the tournament and are one of the better players in it. My concern is just simply, I talked about Dolberg and Poulsen and the contributions they made at the Euros. In qualifying, it was Skav Olsen, and it was defender Joachim Mæhle, who is terrific going forward, is an criminally underrated player, and one of the guys that I absolutely love watching. His highlight tapes are great. He's incredibly gifted. So you've got some goal contributions that can come there too. But this team is not going to maximize its potential if Joachim Mæhle is the guy who's having to score all of these goals. If you can get to a point where Mæhle is, that 5th, 6th, 7th scoring option on the field and just chips in every once in a while into somebody you have to deal with when he bombs forward to create a little bit more space for Christian Eriksen, to create a little more space for the strikers who are finishing well, now you're talking about an incredibly dangerous team. So that is my big question. Can you find somebody to carry the goal-scoring load? You've got plenty of guys who can chip in. It's not a question of the overall attacking talent. But you got to find somebody you can rely on to put the ball in the net. And that is the one thing when you look at this roster that is not incredibly obvious who that player is going to be. The bottom line is that this Denmark team, for good reason, was viewed as kind of one of the dark horse teams of Euro 2020, backed it up with their performance in that tournament, and is more than capable of making another deep run here. This is an excellent, excellent team. And I very much put them in that next group outside of the favorites. Your 5 or so front runners, your Englands, your Brazils, your Argentinas, your Spains, those kind of teams. France. But once you get past that and you're kind of looking at the second group of teams where you're not going to pick them to win, but you wouldn't be shocked to see them in the quarterfinals, semifinals. Wouldn't be shocked if they knock out one of those favorites at some point. Absolutely, Denmark's in that group. And the final thing I'll point out here, Croatia in 2018 fell into that same category. And what was that Croatia team built on? The midfield. With a creative player like Luka Modric, not all that different from what Christian Eriksen offered you. And then you kind of had the pieces, some attacking talent, a player here, a player there. This Denmark team is incredibly similar to kind of, not necessarily in the way they play in the makeup, but from a foundational standpoint and a roster construction standpoint. Croatia is not a bad comparison. And also just in the broader sense of nobody was picking Croatia to make the semifinals, but they were in that next group of, they got a couple world-class players. You look down the roster and you go, oh, there's an awful lot of talent there. It makes sense why they're able to hang with every team in the world and knock some of them off and get to a final. Denmark is in the exact same spot heading into this tournament. We'll see if they can deliver on these expectations. We'll see what this looks like now that they're not carrying the emotional weight of having a national team and national hero collapse in the middle of a game. There's no way to understand the toll that took during Euro 2020, and they still found a way to sort of persevere and produce at that tournament. This could be a special tournament for Denmark. Really, really high on this team. Excited to see what they can do in Qatar. That's all I've got for this preview. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.